Welcome to Uncivilized Unplugged. We always start these with a short meditation, which I would love everybody to do. If you're not driving, if you are driving, please just keep driving. Let's put our feet flat on the floor. Take a deep breath. Let the day begin to wash away any stress, any challenges that you had. Think about putting them up on a shelf. They'll be there at the end of the hour. Begin to connect with you. Begin to connect with your brilliance, with your genius. You're going to hear those words a bunch tonight. Begin to connect with the artist within you, even if you don't consider yourself one. Begin to connect with the power and the strength that exists 2 inches below your belly button. That place from which you make your highest decisions, your intuitive knowings. Just dwell there for a few breaths. Begin to feel into your heart. Sense the different quality that is there in comparison to your gut. Put your hand on it if you'd like. Be here in your own heart for just a moment. For many of us, this is the only time of the day that we do. Sense the love that you have for yourself, for our planet, for our four-legged creatures, and for the other humans in our life. Let that sense of peace and joy and love and fullness wash over you and wash through you. Let it swirl around with the strength in your stomach and alchemize into something different. A combination of the best of the two. And be in that feeling for a second. You put your hands back in your lap. Take a couple more deep breaths together. Slowly begin to wiggle your fingers and toes. Roll your shoulders back if you want. Come back into the room. Come back into your body if you left. And at your own pace, just begin to blink your eyes open and come back into your awareness. Beautiful. It's always so juicy. My favorite parts of doing these are just the meditations. Again, welcome to Uncivilized Unplugged. My name is Trevor Boehm. I am the founder of the Uncivilized Movement, the Man Uncivilized course, the Uncivilized Unplugged podcast. the Man Uncivilized book that did not come in the mail today, although I thought it would, even though I checked the mailbox 72 times. It may be there right now. I'll check as soon as we're done. And tonight we're talking about branding, but I think in a very different context. This week I got hit over and over and over with stories from people about loved ones who had taken their own lives. And Fern and I had our guest tonight. We talked about doing this conversation, and that it just kept coming in the field of suicide. And those of you that were here last week talking with Eric Hodgson about the death of his daughter, suicide's just been on the plate lately. And I started thinking, what if people knew how much power they had in their own design, in the design of their lives? And what if they knew that when one part of their life may have ended through a divorce, through an illness, through a job loss, when that part of their identity closed, that they had a beautiful opportunity to redesign. And I know that because I got to do the same thing myself when my own life fell apart, and wrote about that a little bit today, about how I had to redesign my identity as someone who wasn't going to be at the time, a father, a husband, and a CrossFit gym owner. I was like, holy shit, what do I do now? And it was through the act of redesign, even though I didn't know what it was called at the time. It was just called like, okay, let's figure some new shit out. I really believe wholeheartedly that this conversation tonight isn't just for us solo coaches and entrepreneurs and the regular people who are listening about design and brand and all of this. It's for the lay people. It's for all of us, because at some point we're all going to go through a challenge. Before I introduce our guest, I want to share quickly what the mission is for Man Uncivilized and the Uncivilized movement, because it's beginning to grow some legs. And so my personal mission is to change the way 1 million, that's a lot, revolutionary men express their masculinity by combining both the primal and the divine. Celebration of traditional, I'm not going to poo-poo that, even though it needs some work, with the introduction of a massive amount of consciousness. For those of you that are interested in Man Uncivilized, please go to www.manuncivilized. And if you have any desire to speak with me or follow some of this work, you can find me on Instagram at Traverboehm, TraverBoehm. And so for those of you listening at home, we record this live. This is a Zoom call. We can see faces. For those of you who I can see your faces, thank you so much for coming. And please bear with me as I explain things to people who will be listening to this afterwards, who are just getting the recording. So the frame of Uncivilized Unplugged is this. I wanted to invite a bunch of people from all over the world into my living room where I have a super open, honest conversation with one of the most brilliant people they've probably never heard of. And I hope that's not offensive. Is that offensive, Fern? Not like, okay, good. I haven't had anyone be like, excuse me, everybody's heard of me. But it's always a concern to throw that out. Like, I feel like I'm putting the guests down. But a lot of people haven't heard of you. You're not a big social media person. You're quite private. And so that is the frame of this, is like, let's have an open, honest discussion. Let's talk about things that people aren't talking about. And let's talk to people who most people haven't heard of. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would love to introduce our guest for this evening. And for those of you who have seen any of the pictures I put out of the book, or any of the branding at all in my business, any of it, the poster behind me, the symbol, all of it, everything. Like, before this woman, there was like a stick figure, and there was like a mad crayon drawing, and the most typical image of a guy on his knees with his arms out to the side. That was my branding. I had none. And tonight's guest is the creative director and brand guru, Fern Breslaw. Please put your hands together. Yay. Hi, Fern.
Hi.
Can you come a little bit closer so we can hear you? It's a little bit hard to hear you. Beautiful. So Fern, if you would, in just a sentence or two, tell us who you are, what you do, and one thing that most people may not know about you, even in your real life, but I'll let you take that one.
Okay. This is fun.
You're doing great.
Like the way that most people describe what I do is I'm a creative director, an art director, a designer at core. And I build brands and I help shape businesses and products and create value for them.
Okay.
That's, like in advertising, in marketing, in branding.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done that kind of all over the world now for 15 years.
Okay.
And I've done that with like $12 budgets and with like $90 million budgets, and for luxury goods and for nonprofits. And so, and for individuals. So it's a broad spectrum that my services kind of apply to, but it falls into this kind of commercial art territory of finding creative solutions to things and create value for them. Does that sound like just words?
What's the one thing about this that people don't know, or what drew you to it as an artist? Because I know you as one of the most pure artists I've ever encountered. Like if you guys spend time with Fern, she's drawing on her hand, or she's organizing something to you. Just wherever you go, things get moved and made more beautiful. So you tell us a little bit about that.
What I love about what I do is it's art. It's taking the idea of art in the traditional sense, but using it in a way that creates value. So, it's a practical application of arts. For example, I think you wanted me to talk about the dog project.
Yeah. Tell everybody about the street dog project.
The street dog one or the homeless dog one?
Homeless, either one.
So, like, for example, one of the things that I love one of my favorite projects was launching this, essentially a marketing agency for rescues. And it was based on this truth that there are certain dogs in shelters that nobody fucking wants. They're the bad breed ones, the behavioral ones, the old ones, they're the underdogs. And so it took all of this know-how that you typically find that you apply to big brands, to blue chips, to luxury goods, and I applied that to how do we elevate, reposition, and make these shitty dogs desirable. And we created this boutique, got all these private school girls involved. It was called the Underdog Club, raised a ton of money, got a ton of people involved. It got amazing PR, and it's just a valuable skill set, because it's how do you create worth in something? That gets me off.
Wow. I think that gives people some insight also into the power of what you do and what you can do. Because if you can make the dogs that no one wants the most popular dogs in the town just through some art and positioning, then yeah, you have a fucking skill on your hands. Truly. Okay, let's dive in from a design standpoint and a branding standpoint. Can you just, can you define what it means what does branding mean to you?
Branding to me is like everything has a brand. So
say more about that.
So every product, am I really like low?
Yeah. You got super excited with the dogs and we could hear you.
Every product obviously has a brand, like we're used to the Nikes and the Cokes, and these are all brands, but every organization has a brand. Every customer service experience is a brand. Every person that we know, like in social media, we talk about our personal brands.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I think that every individual also has a brand.
Can you say more about every individual having a brand?
Yeah, this was actually something that over the course of working with you on this project became a lot clearer to me. you were saying, everyone's an artist.
Yeah.
And I really believe that's true. Like everybody is an artist, just everybody isn't a good artist. And everything is art, just everything isn't good art. And on the subway who's eating his Cheetos and like doesn't give a crap and talks loud on his phone, he has a brand. He just isn't conscious of it or trying hard with it or aware of it, but everyone has a brand. It's your identity, right? Everything has an identity. So when I worked with you on like the book, when we worked on this was out at its core. Like, no, it isn't just about finding like the Jesus symbol dude on his like arms out thing. It's, what is the identity of this baby that you're birthing? Who is it? What is it? What does it stand for? What does it emanate? And then articulating that and infusing that in every expression of that brand.
Beautiful. I want to just I know. So first of all, you guys, Fern's like scary smart, like genius smart, where a lot of times I understand what the words are coming out of her mouth. I just don't know what they mean. So I may slow her down from time to time. I think those are really great questions that people could be asking themselves, and we'll actually get to some more questions in a minute. But let me ask you, as an artist and a pure artist, how do you approach any new branding ideas? And what are the out-of-the-box ways that you approach this so we don't all end up with the dude on his knees and his hands out to the side?
I mean, I think that the thing that it's a skill, right? Like writing is a skill, like building buildings is a skill. Like this is also, it's a skill. There's a methodology to it and you learn it. But at its core, where I start is, what is the real value of this idea, of this product, of this service, of this thing that I've been asked to come in and work on? Why is it meaningful? Why would people love it? And if I can't find a good reason, then what could it be that it could do, or it could, how could it evolve to be meaningful or to be important or to be relevant or, so that's always a starting place. It's what is at its core, why does it matter? And then figuring out how that essence, how that value, how we want to bring it to life in terms of its attitude and its personality, the way it expresses itself, like the way that we talk, the way that brand expresses itself to the world. So, is it going to be comforting? Is it going to be disruptive? Is it going to be really aspirational and desirable because it's only for a select few? Do we want it to feel democratic, or where does it fit? Who is it for? Who do we want it to speak to? And then once you know who it's for and why it matters, then you can start figuring out, okay, is it like Jesus dude on his knees, or is there
right? Yeah, one of the things I was so surprised about with the process that you took me through with Uncivilized was that I was a little naive, that it wasn't like a 15-minute conversation. And they're like, cool, she's got it. Like, what's your idea? I don't know. It's like a men's movement and it's kind of like this and like, you good? And it was 6 to 8 months.
It's super long. And like the fancier the services that you get, like if you go to 99 Designs, you have everything in 3 days.
Right.
And you'll pay $400 for it. And like, thank you, merci, bonjour, you're good to go.
Yeah.
But don't fucking know what it's about or why it matters. And nobody who sees it will know either.
Beautiful. So I love it. What are some of the out of the box ways? Because I know when I've watched you with design, I've been like, holy shit, where did she pull that from? Or the questions you're asking me, like, where does that come from? Is that just your own unique design genius? Or do you look at something and go, how would everybody else approach it? Let me come in sideways.
there's a part of it that is I always start from finding what the truth is. What is the insight? What is the friction that we're up against? So for Men Uncivilized, the friction is that there are these two paradigms that exist right now, and
Right.
neither one of them on their own is working for people.
Right.
So that is the truth. That is,
Right.
you can call it the status quo, you can call it the insight, you can call it whatever the hell you want.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the foundation that you have built this on, because without that, there's no need. It isn't
Right.
meaningful without that.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah, I get it. So for people listening who are designing their own brand, it's find the friction.
Well, it's find the problem that's worth solving. Find the thing that you're actually solving for. I just recently worked on, you saw it, I hope nobody at my work is watching this, a smoke alarm that also has Alexa built in and a speaker. And it's like, and it's a nicely designed product, but it's like, that's not actually, no matter how hard we work, no matter how sexy the execution of that is, it's never going to be that valuable because it's not answering to a real problem that needs fixing.
Like, I'm really not staying up at night because I can't talk to my smoke alarm.
It's not a real insight that this thing was built on.
I hope no one's listening, because that sounds like a really fucking stupid idea. I mean, no offense, people. I would tell the smoke alarm, like,
crap comment now this. What do we
whoopsie daisy. Well, the truth is coming out. I love that starting point. Find the truth, find the friction, find the personality of the message. I think if we ended this call now, which we're not going to, you would have given people some serious stuff to think about with their own branding. Now, let me shift a bit. Why is any of this, so I'll ask you the truth, like, why is branding important, not just for the people who are like, hey, I'm a coach, I need my thing, or I'm a solopreneur, I have a store, I'm this. Why is branding also important to the stay-at-home parent, to the civilian, we'll call them?
I mean, I'm going to be super, and you know this, this is for me also a recent sort of realization, which is ironic because I've been doing this for 15 years. But one of my first boss, who was an amazing mentor, he used to say, when you put love in, it shows.
Say that again. If you put love in, it shows.
Love into something, it shows that everything has an aura, basically. And you can tell how much care, how much somebody gave a shit just by so when people pick this thing up,
right, and that thing is the book, like, just so for people listening at home,
they can tell that the people who are involved in it put a ton of love into it. So it's like somebody cared,
right?
And I think that the thing that's kind of blown, the thing that's really blown my lid off is all of us have jobs and we all put so much time and energy, most people, especially who are high performing, into doing those jobs exceptionally well. And that usually shows that our work has an aura, right? But we don't look at ourselves as a product or as a brand that the same reasoning applies to. So for me, the shocking thought, and it's like to my soul, I'm slow, a little, but it's like, oh fuck, what happens if I treat myself like the brand and put the love in that way? And it sounds, it's like, love yourself, like, yeah, we hear it, I'm sick of hearing it, but I think it also shows. Other people sense the value when you put the value in, right? And so I think that viewing oneself as almost as a product, but not in like an Instagram phony social media, I'm going to curate this BS version of my life product, but like, this is, I am a monument. I am building my own brand, my own monument in this human experience, and I can decide how much value others perceive it to have by how much effort I put into it and how much care I put into it. That's a fucking shocking thought.
Yeah, I hope people take that in and don't hear it as like, oh, I need to commoditize myself because of social media and all that. No. They're just making sure the emails don't come flying in later. This is, I have to do a little like cover your ass with, the general public.
With the crystal crowd.
Whoopsie. Be nice. I know. So I hope people hear that and take it the right way. And that is really, it's about giving a shit about yourself and presenting and expressing that giving a shit. I think that's where it gets lost, is people are like, oh, I do give a shit. But then there's a disconnect between that and the expression of how you are in the world. Yet when you're building a brand, when you're putting out art, it is an actual expression. And that people don't realize that everywhere they go, they're expressing themselves in 100 different capacities and 100 different modalities. So they may not, they may not connect those two.
So how is thing, like everyone's an artist, everyone's a brand, everything is art, like all of them they're all true, right? So it's, you can be aware of it and you can be intentional about it, or it can just be whatever it is by default if you're not.
Right. Do you, I just came to that understanding though in the last, say, 2 years, that I'm an artist and that there's an artist in everybody. And it was through writing, it was through creating art. Let's just go off topic a bit. For people who just heard that, so like everyone's an artist, I'm like, well, I'm not a fucking artist, because if you've seen my drawings, clearly not a gifted drawer, but yet how would you recommend people who are frictionless with that statement coming to terms with the fact that they are an artist?
I mean, I feel like especially probably the people who are on this call have a pretty, I would guess, have a pretty good understanding of how creativity is universal, right? Like, to me, art is anything that allows people to look at something in a slightly novel or different way. So that, that can be the way that you raise your kids. That can be the way that you approach cooking. It's different from like care and craft and doing things with care. There's a little bit of doing different, right? But I think that it's the same answer I would give to what is creativity. It's approaching something in a way that is slightly different from the norm.
I hope that settles in with people and realizing how many places in a day that they do approach things differently, from movement to making breakfast to, as you said, raising their kids, to how they and you listening all do express yourself in the world. And
I think no matter what, like the truth is that we have all these different ingredients in our lives anyway, right? Like we have our work, and we have our morning routines, and we have the way that we put our outfits together, or don't if you're you, in the morning, and the way that we decorate our houses. And so no matter what, it's a creation, right? Like we've created, it's a construct, this little life that everyone has. So
I think you also used an incredible word, which is intentionality. Which is, there's going to be a default setting. And if you want different than that default setting, it requires intentionality. Otherwise, you just pick what's there. You grab what's closest, you grab what's easiest, you do what's easiest. You like we find the homeostasis and go with the easiest path, right?
Yeah.
Can you walk us through? I know you've asked a lot of questions around branding, but I just remember so much of our dialogue was you questioning me
Yeah. That
of
was
like about yeah, what the fuck you doing? About
my
why?
Cosmo quiz.
Yeah, why is that as opposed to this? Why did you make this choice of that? What is the remember we went through that this can you just run people
Like 50 questions, I think.
yeah. Yeah. Can you just walk people who are new to their own brand and this is business, et cetera. So we'll just say business and or personal. Like
I
some of
think
the great questions.
a lot of this is my method, and I know it isn't only my method, and at the same time it isn't everybody's method. I don't know a ton of people who use this approach, but for example, Warby Parker I know used this approach, which is when you're creating something and you're at ground zero, you have to define it. You want to define who it is, what it believes, how what its taste is, what its values
Mm,
are, who its enemy is, what it cares about, what it wants to eat for Sunday fucking brunch. You want to
hmm
know it the way you would know a person, because then you have to be able to represent it and express it. And
mm,
so for me, I did the like massive Cosmo quiz
hmm
where I was like, okay, if Uncivilized had to go like live on a desert island and it could only bring a backpack of stuff, what would be in it? Like,
hmm
who does it want to like have a last supper with? Who does it want
hmm
to fucking punch in the face? Like,
mm.
I needed to
Liz
understand.
Gilbert. Sorry.
Am I not allowed to swear on this?
No. I was just saying who I wanted to punch in the face. You're doing great. I interrupted.
Like, it's too late.
Yeah. Yeah. Swear your fucking head. By the way, I warned everybody. I was
But
like,
like you want to you have to understand all of those things, and then it's so easy, right? If I know, then okay, this is the music that it listens to, this is who it hates, this is how it feels about the feminist crowd, these are its favorite colors, this is what's in its backpack, this is the kind of chick it wants to bring home and bang, this is the kind of chick it wants to marry. Like, now I know who it is, now I can go and make a fucking logo.
okay, because I'm just going to give you a little insight to that quiz. A lot of that, I was like, I don't know. I'm going to make some shit up. So what do you say to people who go, I just don't know? And I get that the path is to get there eventually, but when they're staring at those questions and going, I don't know what kind of music my thing listens to. I don't know who it wants to bang. I know who I want to bang and what music I listen to. Are we just projecting ourselves, or how do you work people through that, like the I don't know section of that phase?
There are some things that and for small businesses often,
Mm-hmm.
or for like startups, or for like for anything that has a parent, let's say, because there are two kinds of clients,
Mm-hmm.
generally speaking. You've got the large organization, large corporation, where who knows who birthed this baby, but we're
Mm-hmm.
now 7 layers deep into like upper management, and nobody is going to go to bat for it, and nobody gets to make the call because it's going to market research, period.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the situation where you've got somebody who's trying to launch a business or a product or a nonprofit or
Mm-hmm.
something, and usually there's a fair amount of that person that goes into the
Mm,
thing. And usually, unless there are a ton of resources that just happen to be sitting there,
right.
that parent is going to be responsible for communicating a fair
Wow.
amount for that brand. And so I try to find the best parts of where the synergy is in the person, because your brand is not you, but it is often a big part of you. If you look at a Patagonia and Yvon Chouinard, very similar value sets. If you look
Right.
at a Virgin and a Branson, you can see how the personality of the founder has been infused. And if you look at a Lagerfeld and a Chanel, right? Like these things, you can see that it is offspring.
Mm. Oh, wow. Okay.
Is clearly offspring.
The book, my book. Yeah.
Sounds like you. It
Right.
has there are many pieces of your nature that have been infused into this brand, which means that you can communicate naturally, comfortably,
Yeah.
authentically in your business.
Right. And yet you still had to ask me all kinds of questions to guide me there.
I also had to ask those questions because I didn't know you.
Right. 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 Right.
Right?
Beautiful. Yeah.
It's like a crash course in getting to know someone.
Right. Yeah. It was just conversation after conversation, even just to come up with a logo. I
Yeah.
remember that. What are some of the most common mistakes you see? Well, first of all, thank you for that. I appreciate the way you explain that as almost parent-child. And we used to always joke when I had a CrossFit gym. If you go to another gym, the workouts are pretty much the owner's favorite workouts. That's what
Right.
the population does every day. And anyone who came to ours was like, "Oh, you're going to swing kettlebells, you're going to do push-ups, you're going to do heavy deadlifts every day." You know why? I fucking love that shit. And I can see how the infusion of that, and I think, do you need to give? I'm just going to riff for a second. Do you need to give people permission to allow their brands to be
Often.
them?
Often. People don't know. And I think like the biggest one of the biggest mistakes that I see is the leaning into what we think a brand should be. What we
Say
right.
more about that.
So it's like, and I see it in big brands also. It's like, okay, everything ends up being very similar, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
um, we think that we should sound, I'm going to throw out words, but they're
Mm-hmm.
just like generalities. We think that things should look fancy or be professional um, or look high tech or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So it's like this expectation that a lot of clients, you in this case, our client, or like any, you know, owners have to fit into a code of what is normal for that category.
Mm-hmm.
And let me say, and you do want to, you do want, it's the entropy redundancy rule. So you don't want to be so different that nobody knows what the hell it is.
Right.
Can't make any sense of it because you'll lose people. People like the familiar. But if
Right.
you just copycat the most like the genericness of the category, then it's not special. Then
Mm-hmm.
nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I feel like the biggest gift in many ways that I give to anything that I work on is finding that sweet spot that allows it to be itself and gives it permission to be different
Mm.
without being irresponsible,
Wow.
you know,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
without alienating people.
Yeah. I get that. When I first took the dude on his knees with his hands out to a t-shirt designer, this was before I met you. He was like, "Yeah, I like this, but this has been used about 10,000 times.
Right.
And it's yoga, it's martial arts, it's meditation, it's yada, yada, yada. So why don't you come up with something completely new and different?" And that's how that was when I came to you with the symbol idea was, I have these ideas. If we could frame this to wrap up or begin to wrap up around people who are now redesigning, let's say, or reinventing themselves, coming out of a challenge or a challenging period or a transition in their lives, how would you recommend people begin that process, given what you know about branding? I know this isn't the coaching world, it's not your world, but given what you know about branding, I'm just going to throw a curveball at you. What would you recommend?
I mean, I don't even feel like I'm in a position to recommend because I'm testing it on myself right now.
Okay.
You know? But after I know that I'm very good at what I do and that creating value and making things worth loving is it is a skill set that can be applied to anyone.
Right.
So I refuse to believe it can't be applied to us.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I can say what I'm doing right now.
Are you comfortable doing that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my realization was that I felt creatively bankrupt. I was, I'm working at the biggest agency in the world, and I'm working my 90-hour weeks, and I love that I get to make shit all day, and there are a lot of pros to it, but it's a certain kind of client, it's a certain kind of work. And I just felt like the things that mattered at a deeper level, the things that I have nightmares about, were not being satisfied. So there was like this void, basically, that I was trying to fill in all the typical ways that we try to fill voids that are maladjusted. And so, you did the Year to Live. I'm doing some sort of iteration of that, which is it's basically going out and feeding the art for me. And I made a list of what I was hungry for creatively, spiritually, as a human. If I am the art, then what do I need to give myself to make myself worth loving?
Wow. I think that was the best answer we ever could have hoped for. So thank you just for sharing your own experience of it. I remember when you sent me the email that asked your company, why do we take the most creative people on the planet and beat the creativity out of them? And I thought, that's so common of just the human experience, period. Of why do we take these things that we supposedly love and shove them in a box that suffocates them? And good for you for taking the massive, massive risk and showing the courage to feed your heart
Pretty much.
by finding a way to feed your art.
I think the two things might be interchangeable.
Yeah, they truly, truly are. Right. And that is the journey of you can produce, right? We all can produce.
Yes,
Does
and
it fill us?
right? Like, you can't produce. There's this Noah Harari quote that blew my mind recently, where he was talking about the truth, and we've been talking about insights, right? For you it was, okay, there are these two paradigms. That's
Right.
the foundation. You have to figure out what is the human truth, or the challenge that we can build something on that gives it meaning. And the Noah was talking about how the truth doesn't exist at the center. You don't find the real truth, the interesting truths at the center. You find it in the periphery. And in order to find it, you have to be willing, I love this, to waste time. And because you have to go down dead ends, you have to make mistakes, you have to fuck around some,
Right.
And that doesn't work in the rat race productivity circus.
Right. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I hope people take away from both that quote and what you just said a minute before about feeding your heart and feeding your art in the same notion. This is the question I love to pose to all of the guests. Given that we have such an elite listening audience. I mean, we're talking about like the top players in the world here, people who have their finger on the pulse of every industry and all change. If someone listening could help you, what could we do for you? And the sky's the limit here. If you're like, I want to be on Oprah, one of these guys is going to be like, cool, I got it. What can we do for you? And if you wouldn't mind even sharing about some of the project I know that you have kind of on the back burner with animals.
Yeah. I guess you asked me to think about this, and I was like, ooh, this is very tricky because I'm going through this, like, I'm also going through this bit of a journey thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So my answers don't fit in this tidy box. But
Good.
I feel that what I've given myself in terms of what I want to do with my art
Mm-hmm.
is find problems that are worth fixing
Mm-hmm.
and create meaningful solutions to them
Mm-hmm.
that leave beautiful footprints.
Fuck, that's gorgeous.
And so, for example, going back to an insight,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I want to do this year is based on this insight that 68% of US households have pets.
Mm-hmm.
56%, I like facts. You know
Mm-hmm.
this.
She loves facts.
I love facts. 56% of women who are in abusive relationships don't leave those relationships because there's nowhere for them to bring their pets in terms of domestic violence shelters. There are only 11 shelters in the US for women that also accept pets. So if you take 68% of the population
Mm-hmm.
and you look at the incidence of domestic violence, which is massive, and factor that over 50% of those women are not fucking leaving because they know that their partner is going to take it out or threaten to take it out on the animal that's left behind.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge insight. That's a
Yeah.
huge clear fucking problem, right?
Yeah.
So
that I never would have thought of until I remember when you brought it up. I was like, get the fuck out of here.
Crazy insight, which I discovered by wasting a lot of time in the periphery of animal welfare. And so I would like to build a foster program for women's pets who are trying to escape situations of domestic violence. Super targeted, very simple solve. It's something I know I can do and that has meaning. That's an example. So in answer to your question, what could people do if they have a real problem, if they have a worthwhile problem that requires a meaningful creative solution? I would love to hear about it because that is my art. It's finding solutions.
Amazing. And I can only imagine the impact that project will have. Just not only just given the numbers.
I want to launch this soft drink. Like, I give zero fucks about the soft drink. You know, it's a meaningful problem.
Yeah, it's a very meaningful problem. I think the ripple effect of what that problem is, and in the terms of human suffering, is massive. Because how many of those people are staying in absolutely horrendous situations to save the pet? And the fact that only 11 of them, and it's such a mind-boggling problem. So those of you listening, let's find this woman and get her some help in this project, especially when the time is right. Fern, you did mention.
Send her your problems.
Yeah. You did mention that you're, I think, 8 weeks into a Year to Live project. And I think that's absolutely amazing. And I have no doubt that at the end of, when you've gone through some of the personal journeys and trials and tribulations of living like that, and just how deeply you're diving into it, that this is going to be perhaps the greatest thing that you do build. Second to my book.
How could it not, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just the ripple effect of that. Your street dog project, amazing. And your ideas are so often around animals and alleviating human suffering and the pain that women experience daily. So I commend you for it. I think that's just gonna be so rad too. Like you're gonna be the reason why people are like, and I'm out. Sorry, dick. And I'm taking the dog with me. And I'm gonna be like, guess what? Guess what, fucko? Go to anger therapy. Mm-hmm.
Fucko, underused word.
Yeah, fucko. It's a staple here on Unplugged. Yeah. So beautiful. Thank you so much. Not just for sharing, I'm going to say first for the audience, for sharing your expertise, and most importantly, just for opening up and sharing how much art means to you, how much this expression means to you, and that you're new to this journey of self-love. And I think people see you and see the art that you create and go, wow, it's just the trap of she's got it all together. Right? She's got it all figured out. She's got this dialed in, and it's the trap we all get stuck in. So anytime someone who is put in a position of coming in as an expert is also willing to say, yeah, and I'm struggling with some of this basic humaning shit, I think it's even more powerful than the conversation about how do what music does your amazing men's movement listen to? So thank you for that on behalf of all of the. What's that?
Being like, okay, I'm like this professional, but I'm also messy and working it out, and it's
yeah.
I don't know how that's going to be received in life either.
Yeah, it's scary as shit. Yeah. And I know for those of you watching, Fern's not a professional speaker. She's not a coach. She's not an author. She's not any of the things where we go, oh, that person talks about this shit all the time. She doesn't talk about any of this shit all the time. And so we're very grateful to have you on. And then just personally, you know how much this brand is and my mission is because of your work and because of the undying amounts of love that you've put into it. And it is that love that you've put into it is the reason why it's not just some shitty paperback book that nobody's going to read, but it's actually a grabbing movement. So you are in effect changing the paradigm of masculinity. And I cannot, from the bottom of my heart, thank you enough for all that you've done for me and for this movement as well. And if you see the men on the program doing the same, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Fern, I hesitate to even ask this because I don't think you want it answered, but if people do want to find you or find out more about what you do and what you're up to, I know you have a website, Art Runs Wild, right? www.artrunswild.com. But other than that, are you just off grid?
What do you mean, my Insta? What are you talking about?
Or just do you want to stay relatively anonymous, or do you want us to make you famous?
I'm very media neutral.
That's the sweetest answer.
I don't know. I'm an artist. I don't know.
Okay. We're just gonna. So if you guys want to follow what Fern does, go to www.artrunswild.com. Leave her the fuck alone. Let her do her Year to Live project. Let her keep making amazing. And you're gonna find her because she's out there crushing shit in the world. Is gonna continue to go out there and crush shit in the world. So thank you again for coming on, Fern. For those of you listening at home, this is Uncivilized Unplugged. Again, if you're interested in the Man Uncivilized program and joining this movement, this past week I have had multiple men reach out to me and ask about starting their own men's groups or joining ones here in Colorado. You can find me at www.manuncivilized.com or on Instagram at Traver, TraverBoehm. All right, gang, you know how we end it. Go be fucking legends. Go be uncivilized. Thank you for your time, energy, and for showing up tonight. Fern, love you. Thank you for coming on. Bye, guys.